For many years, Frederick II, King of Prussia, known as the Great, had been an admirer of Voltaire. He was an unusual king for his time, the nearest thing to a liberal despot, if that is possible. Of course, he had absolute powers, as did most of his fellow monarchs at the time, except the kings of England. In the 18th century, a king could call, "Off with his head," and off it came. Not with Frederick. He stopped executing people altogether, a quite astonishing move for any king to make. He began erecting public buildings and improving roads to make things work more effectively. He introduced schemes of education for the common people. He developed manufacturing concerns, encouraged free trade, and in fact did a great deal to improve the lives of his people, and as a result, the prosperity of his small state. He also developed a first-class, well-disciplined army, already well established by his father. For many, it was a privilege to serve in Frederick's army. All this resulted in his becoming a great deal more powerful and influential than he would otherwise have been. Much of what he did that was liberal and enlightened emanated from the ideas of Voltaire. It was no surprise when, after the death of Madame de Châtelet, Voltaire decided to move to live in Frederick's enlightened capital of Potsdam. Voltaire was, of course, open to flattery, like many others, and the king's invitation was quite hard to refuse. He was under no illusions about Frederick, however. He was still an absolute monarch, and as such, not to be relied on. Still, Frederick did try. He was musical, and played the flute reasonably well. He tried to get Voltaire to teach him to write poetry in French, in which he was fluent. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, of course, even if the sow happens to be a well-endowed king. So Frederick's literary progress stalled. Then there was the question of women. Women had always figured largely in Voltaire's life, but at Frederick's court, although he was officially married, they hardly existed. However, for a while Voltaire, the most eminent ornament of the court, felt reasonably satisfied. Frederick was not backward when it came to spending money. He built this summer palace for himself first, sans souci, without care. There were figs and grapes under careful cultivation on the terraces. The splendid gardens were full of echoes of the order of classical Greece, much in fact for Voltaire to admire. Entertaining his guests to tea was easy when you had a tea-house like this. From a design by Frederick himself, the tea-house unsurpassingly captures the Oriental taste, which was the order of the day in mid-18th century Europe. But as kings do, Frederick, once he'd achieved his goal of capturing Voltaire, got a bit tired of him, as Voltaire did of the king. Two events drove them apart. A scientist called Maupertuis, well known in Europe, had been the leading light in Berlin before Voltaire came. Maupertuis had some mad schemes about founding the perfect society in the bowels of the earth. Voltaire could not resist writing a comic poem about this. Called Diatribe of Dr. Akakia, it made merciless fun of Maupertuis, Frederick's favourite scientist. Voltaire himself read it to Frederick, who laughed his head off, but of course forbade publication. Voltaire agreed, but naturally he could hardly bury his funniest lines, so somehow the work got around, and Frederick was suitably furious. Then the businessman Voltaire, unable to miss a good financial deal when he saw one, secretly speculated against the king's currency, using inside information and connections, and was found out. Well, the king was even more mad this time, and Voltaire a bit rueful at being discovered. So he left. Kings, no matter how clever, were not to be relied on.